Melyssa Ford and Queens Flip go to war on the Joe Budden podcast. That's right, y'all. On the last Patreon, Empath Squared, Melyssa Ford and Queens Flip aired out some of the issues they've been having with the treatment they get on the Joe Budden podcast. Now, the cast was firmly against Melyssa Ford from what I observed, but we need to get right to it because I think this dialogue revealed a lot about who's getting special treatment at the Joe Budden podcast and who isn't. But let's get into what the core of this argument was. Ford immediately calls out Flip for trying to leave the pod early. That's right, Flip was trying to leave the pod after 20 minutes, and later on, Melyssa Ford continues to question why Flip gets special treatment, and Flip says it's part of the deal he has with Joe and Ian. Ford then plays the woman card and insinuates that women don't feel as comfortable negotiating their contracts. I assume she's blaming the patriarchy, and I see Melyssa Ford doing this more and more as she starts her new podcast, which looks like it's going to be a lot of men blaming. I just got to be honest, that's how I see it. Then Ford elaborates even further and says that she isn't exactly comfortable herself when it comes to negotiating her contracts, and says that there is a lot of inequity in the workplace. And this kind of makes a little bit of sense. Listen to what I'm saying. Melyssa Ford recently said on a space that when she first got to the pod, she did not want to get paid the first couple of months because she felt she had to prove herself on the pod. And I would say that was utterly stupid, and it kind of lends credence to her saying that she doesn't feel comfortable negotiating. Then Flip fires back at Melyssa Ford and accuses her of playing the victim. I think he's referencing the last back and forth that Flip and Ford had, which resulted in Ford being so upset that she walked off set and left the pod early. Now, I know what Flip is talking about. Remember on the last episode or a couple episodes ago of the Joe Budden podcast, Melyssa Ford was talking about Flip was frightening me. Some of the language he was using, I was scared. He seemed really angry. I had to leave. So I think that's what Flip is talking about. And it's actually a great point by Flip. Ish then steps in and says that men don't always feel comfortable negotiating either. Melyssa Ford doubles down and they go back and forth. I think Ish got the better of her in that argument because I do think that, hey man, there's some men who really don't feel comfortable negotiating either. They kind of just take whatever is given to them. But let me know who you think won the argument if you saw the Patreon. Then a big thing happens when Joe brings up how Ford was hating when she saw how Flip was suspended and was also able to make content and still got paid. For those of you that don't recall, remember when Flip challenged Joe to a fight and he was suspended for a couple episodes? I would say almost 3, 4, 5 episodes. And it was as a result of, Flip being disruptive to the podcast. So I could see why members of the show have an issue with Flip getting paid while he was suspended. It was the wrong message to send. And to me, it illustrates that the pod isn't being run professionally, because if you challenge your boss to a fight, you're supposed to get your pay docked. You're supposed to pay some type of penalty. And I think the penalty should have been him not getting paid. Then they start debating about who has received more vacation time on the pod. Joe seems to be insinuating that Melyssa Ford has. Flip agrees, but Melyssa Ford disagrees, obviously. And I think this whole conversation was a commentary about who's receiving special treatment on the pod. So this argument right here tells me that Melyssa Ford and Flip are getting paid more than Ice and Ish because they get to put things in their contract about how often they have to be there, and it seems like they get the most time off, they get the most leeway because their previous successes in show business. And a lot was said, a lot was revealed. And even though people say that, oh, Danny, how come you're exaggerating this? To me, a lot of these conversations reflect the workplace, like a regular workplace. Yes, people don't argue all the time in the workplace. They're not cursing each other out. But you've been in environments where people are working And the disrespect happened subtly. So it's not arguing. It's just like, hey, man, I saw that you left your job a little early, Sally. What's going on there? I see that you're taking vacation. Oh, when you went on vacation, you didn't send an email. What's that about, Mark? And I'm peeping it. It's happening on camera. So that's one thing that I wanted to know. It was a big discussion, and I had to do a video about it. But let me know what you think about it. Let me know if you saw the Patreon episode. It's called Empath Squared. The first 20 minutes was good, but the rest of it, well, I think the first part of it was good. It was basically verbal tennis between Melyssa Ford and Flip, and the rest of it was pretty boring. And I wanted to end this video by saying we're getting close to Melyssa Ford's podcast, Hot and Bothered. And I must say that she did a space recently where she kind of talked about her vision for the podcast. And after listening to that, I thought to myself, she is about to launch a terrible podcast. And I say that because the space had Imani hosting a conversation that I thought Melyssa Ford should have held. And then on top of that, Melyssa Ford was being outshined by the moderators of her community. And when she was asked questions about the vision of her pod, she didn't seem to have any coherent, salient points. I mean, they asked her, how is this pod going to be about men? She wasn't really ready to answer that. On top of that, some people were asking if she would talk about her days as a vixen. And she said, not really, because, some of the people in my past might have gotten married and I don't like to get messy. It's all the talking points of a podcast that is about to flop horribly. And I'm not trying to be mean to Melyssa Ford. I see Melyssa Ford online is trying to curse some of the negative people out. And I have to say that I don't know if Melyssa Ford's ready for that level of vitriol that she's going to get back, because when you start to challenge people online, they're invested in your failure. And I don't think Melyssa Ford is capable of, fighting back. She blocked me because I said that I thought she was drunk on a taping of the podcast. And she just seems really, really on edge when it comes to feedback about this podcast. And if it doesn't work out, it will be a public failure. And there's already a lot of people in the Joe Budden podcast fan base that don't like her presence on the show. She said recently that she's not going anywhere. And I think that might be a sign that she's resigned. And even Jay Wan said that. So I assume they're all signing couple re-ups and they're going to be there for a little bit longer. But let me know what you think. If you heard this space, what were your takeaways? I'm really not trying to be mean. I just noticed that Melyssa Ford dropped the ball in trying to communicate what the basis of her podcast was going to be. She allegedly has recorded multiple episodes. She said she was going to interview a doctor. It seems like a clash of creative ideas. Like 1 minute she's saying this is for women, then 1 minute she's saying this is for men. And a lot of that fan base that is going to be going to her podcast are men, and I don't think she's prepared to serve that audience what they want to hear. All right, y'all, that's my video for today. Follow me on Instagram, The Stop TV. Follow me on Twitter, The Stop TV. This is Danny from The Stop. Peace.
Hey Danny, congratulations on launching your YouTube channel. That is a big deal, honestly. There's a lot of people who think about doing things and never actually get up off their butts to actually do it, so congratulations on that. When it comes to the haters, I mean, that's just life. I mean, I can't tell you how many haters I've had over the 2 decades I've been in this business. And it's not always easy dealing with them, but if you know that you're talented, if you know that what you're doing brings you a sense of joy and you have a passion for it, the haters will, honestly, they're just confused fans. They will jump on the bandwagon, or they won't. At the end of the day, it all has to do with what you want to do, with how you feel about what you're doing. And if you are impassioned by what it is that you're doing, then nothing else matters and all of the BS fades away. That's basically what's happened in my life by my own experiences. So I wish you the best of luck. I think you're going to be epic.